Welcome to my new Senate video, and let's start diving into Illinois. So we have some big news because first of all, Dick Durbin, the incumbent senator, has finally decided to retire, and the lieutenant governor, J.B. Pritzker, declared that she was running. Alongside that, J.B. Pritzker has decided to back and endorse Juliana Stratton, and most importantly, Stratton has gotten all the endorsements. You can see the main ones, I should say. She got an endorsement of Tammy Duckworth, who could become her colleague. She also got the endorsement of someone who used to be a senator of Illinois, Carl Mosley Braun. This basically means that the primary for the Democrats is basically over, even if Robin Kelly Raja is still running. I think with Pritzker's power, his wealth, his people, and just donors are gonna... Stratton has basically this in the bag. While the GOP, you also have Rod Blagojevich, the former governor of Illinois who tried to sell Obama's seat, so it could become a very interesting race to see the former ex-Democrat, ex-governor of Illinois trying to become the next senator of the state, but by going by the GOP route. And I think Trump could actually endorse Rod Blagojevich because of the fact that Trump commuted his sentence, and I wouldn't be surprised if he also endorses Rod Blagojevich for Senate, so that's something to look out for. With someone like Dick Durbin, who was older, who was more, to be honest, more out of touch, and thankfully he's not running. I had this before as a likely victory for the Democrats, but with someone like Stratton, who is unifying at most wings of the party, and she's just younger, I think the Democrats will win here by a safe margin of over 12%. And now for a similar race, I should say on a similar fashion, for Virginia, the only reason why I have Virginia not being safety is because Mark Warner still hasn't decided yet on if he's actually going to run for Senate. And bear in mind, AIPAC already endorsed him, so maybe some people are expecting him to actually run. And Mark Warner, he's 70 years old, so he's probably 50-50 on it. He does have a lot of money. He has a war chest. Well, the GOP, they don't have that many nominees, but I do think if Warner retires, I do believe Glenn Youngkin, he might run for Senate in 2026 after his governorship ends in 2025. And if Warner retires and Youngkin runs, this would really go all the way from safety to all the way to toss-up, which is interesting versus ASAC. For now, I'm going to leave this as a Warner win by 10 to 12%, but bear in mind, yeah, because he won here against Gade by 12, but it's a Trump midterm, so if he runs safety, if he doesn't, toss it up. I'm gonna leave this as likely D for now. And now we can move on to almost lean margins, to be honest with you. For New Mexico, unfortunately, we don't have that much news from New Mexico yet. Hopefully we'll get that soon, but we can only assume that Ben Ray Lujan will probably run for re-election, and guessing either Nakamura or someone else like Dominici or someone like that will run for Senate. Bear in mind, the GOP got really lucky in 2020 that they had Ron Chetty, I don't know how to say his name, so please tell me in the comments below. I don't know. He ran for Senate, and he was a decent nominee, and even then he still lost by 6%, so I'm guessing that Lujan will probably win re-election, probably like a similar margin, probably not as low a victory for him, but I'm gonna guess that Democrats will win here by 6 to 8%. And now for New Hampshire, a sore spot for the GOP, and the reason for that is because, as many of you heard or seen in the news, Chris Sununu, who back in 2022, he did the same thing. He's running for Senate and helping the GOP gain the seat, but in the end, he decided to decline running for Senate, and he might run for president. And you only got Scott Brown, and you also got Corey Lewandowski, who's close to Trump, but he probably loses by a safe margin. And the Democrat, the reason why there was a lot of hype because Jean Shaheen, who won here last time by like 15%, she decided to retire, and now Chris Pappas is most likely going to become the next senator of New Hampshire. And yeah, he's basically on track to do it right now, because without Sununu, this means that the race is over. So I'm going to say the Democrats will win here by a margin of like 6 to 8%. I think that's fair. I know some pollsters are only saying this is lean, but without Sununu, it being a Trump midterm is going to be a big victory for the Democrats. And now let's go to Minnesota. So there's been some news, not as much as some other races like Georgia, for example, which I'll talk about in a second. So first of all, as many of you know, we got Tina Smith decided to retire. Anyway, Angie Craig hasn't decided to run for Senate, but the issue for her is that Flanagan has most of the momentum, because she basically, after Tina Smith decided to announce that she's retiring, Flanagan within like 24 hours announced a Senate bid, which is looking kind of crazy move, but that's politics to you. Well, the GOP, they don't have any good nominees right now. They got Schwarzenegger, who's okay, I think, but then you got Royce White, who I do not recommend for you to look up his tweets, by the way. Do not look that up. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but yeah, they're just something else. You got Coleman, like I said before, daughter-in-law of Coleman. You got Robbins, who would actually be a decent nominee in my opinion, but I don't think she's going to get the Trump endorsements. So she probably would actually make this lean D if she got the nomination, but I don't expect her to somehow win the primary. You got also Tafoya, but who knows? Either way, it's not looking good for the GOP. Tina Smith only won here by 5.2% last time. I'm going to say that the Democrats will win here by a margin of 6 to 8% compared to last time. Trump might be underwater or too underwater by the midterms. The economy, we'll see how that goes. But things keep up. I'm going to guess that Democrats will probably have like a okay to decent blue wave. And now for a race that I almost forgot. For Nebraska, I still think that, I know usually this is a race that most people, or a state that usually doesn't have competitive races, but the fact is, Dan Osborne, instead of running for House, like I would have recommended for him to do, like running for the 1st district or the 2nd district, especially with Don Bacon, the representative, looking like he's going to retire, Dan Osborne decided to go at it again and run for Senate for the 2nd time, and as you can see, it's against Pete Ricketts, and he's going to try to go basically he's the out-of-touch, rich politician route, but I don't think he's as bad as his previous candidate he went against, Deb Fischer, and Deb Fischer was more nonchalant. She basically took the race for granted and almost lost it, and basically was saved by Trump actually winning by a decent margin. There's some polling here, but I don't trust this poll at all. Problem is, here's the thing, Dan Osborne, he's not going to have as much steam as last time because Fischer was a bad candidate, but at the same time, Democrats are probably going to do better in the midterms because of Trump and him not being on the ballot, so that those two things kind of like null each other, so I'm going to guess that the GOP will win here, but only by like 5 to 7%. So yeah, he does slightly better because it's a midterm, but still, the Nebraska still doesn't flip. And now for Ohio, so Sherrod Brown, he still hasn't said anything on if he's actually going to run for Senate, which is kind of a bit weird because by now I would have expected him to say something, but he hasn't. So also another big news is that Tim Ryan is looking to run for governor instead of running for Senate, so he already declined running for Senate in 2026. So yeah, expect him to run for governor. And Brown, I'm not sure if he's even gonna run at all, because if he runs and he somehow wins, he has to run again in 2028. So that would mean he would have ran in 2024, 2026, and 2028. Most importantly, John Husted, he's liked by every single wing of the GOP. From the neocons to the isolationists, from the old school conservatives to the new age Republicans. Every single wing of the GOP, they're okay with him. They might not like him, but he's not disliked. So he's an amazing appointment, tactically speaking, by the GOP and the wine. Even if Sherrod Brown runs, Husted will win here. I think he wins here by 5 to 7%. And now for Iowa, the only reason why I have Iowa this low is because there's maybe a shot that the farmers are quite affected by Trump tariffs, or if there's a recession yet, but we will see. There might not be a recession at all, we will see. But as many of you know, Joni Ernst, last time she ran, only won here by 6.5%, even though Greenfield was heavily backed by donors, and even then, she still lost by 6.5%. Ernst, she's not as well liked by the GOP, but she's not as unpopular as an incumbent governor, for example, Kim Reynolds, who actually was basically forced to retire from, is basically being forced to not run for re-election because the GOP doesn't like her. But I think Ernst probably played her cards just enough so she doesn't have to retire from politics, while the Democrats, another thing is they don't have a decent nominee. They got a bunch of names that are low name recognition, but most importantly, got a libertarian candidate, most likely Thomas Lane. Sorry, I don't know his name, but yeah, that does mean usually the libertarian candidate gets anywhere from like 1 to 4% of the GOP vote, which is a very big thing in the state of, like, in this race, for example. You got Senate R. Sorry for if my voice is a bit different today. I had to re-record this video because for some reason the audio cut out and my voice is actually starting to hurt. But anyway, I think that Iowa and Joni Ernst, I think she will win here, but probably by like 5 to 7%. And now for Texas. So Texas, the GOP are probably on track to nominate Ken Paxton. I know that Trump is really torn on who he will endorse in the end. I know that John Cornyn, as many of you know, he's the incumbent senator. Ken Paxton, as you can see in the polls, he's barely defeating John Cornyn, the incumbent senator. But bear in mind, Trump endorsing either candidate would really make this race go any form of way. So that's something to look out for. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump straight up just endorses both candidates like he did in Arizona. Well, the Democrats, we got Colin Arvett, who ran in 2024, lost to Ted Cruz. You also got Beto O'Rourke, who's, you know him by now. Most people even outside of politics know him. He basically ran for Senate, lost, ran for president, lost, ran for governor, lost, so I don't think he should go. Ken Paxton is not a good nominee, but Democrats, they don't have good candidates. They do have good candidates, but they don't push them. For example, someone like Henry Cuellar, for example, in my opinion, he would actually defeat Ken Paxton, but Texas Democrats, they're not the best at tactically choosing their candidates. And I'm not talking about the primary voice, but I'm talking about the party. And Ken Paxton, I think he's probably going to win. Could be a lean margin, but I'm going to guess he wins here by 4 to 6%. And yeah, now we can move on to the lean margins. So first of all, in Georgia, we have some big news because of the fact that another sore spot for the GOP, because Brian Kemp, the popular incumbent governor, most likely going to run for president, and he declined running for Senate. And yeah, that's a huge blow for the GOP. And now you got Buddy Carter running for Senate. You got John King running for Senate. At the end of the day, Brian Kemp was the only one that most likely would have defeated incumbent Democrat Jon Ossoff, who is liked by all wings of the Democrat Party. He's quite charismatic. He has a lot of money. And yeah, I mean, it's basically over in my opinion for the GOP here. Also, MTG declined running for Senate. Interestingly enough, just something that you gotta remember. So anyway, I think John Ossa, because of the fact that the state is trending to the left, and the fact that the Atlanta Metro is just going to get more and more Democrat-leaning, I'm going to say that the Democrats will easily win here. Not only by a lean margin, could be even a likely margin, to be honest with you. But I'm going to say Ossoff wins here by 3 to 5%. And now let's go to Michigan. First of all, Pete Buttigieg, after talking to the DNC and people, he decided not to run for Senate and is probably going to run for president down the road. And you got more people. You can see Joe Tate, Speaker of the Michigan House, running. You got El Said. And you got McMurray, like I said before. You also got Haley Stevens. But there's not really like an S-tier candidate with a lot of name recognition for the Democrats. But it's a Trump midterm, so they're quite lucky. While the GOP got Mike Rogers, who's most likely going to be the Republican nominee. Issue is, without Trump on the ballot, I do expect him to lose. Unless something big happens within the Democrat nominee. We get closer to election day, I think Democrats will carry through. It's not going to be a big victory because they don't have that amazing tier candidate. And yeah, Gary Peters, he probably would have won by like a likely margin in my opinion. But Democrats, because of the Trump midterm, I do expect things to be somewhat blue leaning to some extent. Could be a big blue wave, could be a small blue wave. But either way, I think whoever the Democrat nominee will be here will win here by 1 to 3%. And now for Maine, which is very interesting because it is a Biden state. I should say, it was a Biden state, then a Kamala state. Went to Kamala by 6.9%. Went to Biden by, was it 9? Yeah, 9.1%. But at the same time, the incumbent senator, Susan Collins, is a Republican in a likely D state, which is very odd. You don't see that anymore. As we've seen in 2024, partisanship could come up, and Susan Collins is a Senate career. I wouldn't be surprised about that. But the issue is for the Democrats right here, the fact they don't have an S-tier candidate. You got Wood, Chief of Staff for Katie Porter. That's pretty much about it because Golden probably has a pact with Susan Collins since she was his former employer. So I don't think he's going to run, even though he could easily run and win. Mills may run, but she's older. Bengry, Vector, Brennan, Kirk, Jackson. I think Susan Collins, as long as Golden doesn't run, she wins. I think she might get lucky, even in the Trump midterm. If Democrats would actually have a decent S-tier candidate, yeah, 100%. Susan Collins would follow the route of John Tester, Sherrod Brown, and others before them, and lose here. But I don't think she's going to win by a likely margin. I expect her to just barely pull through and probably win here by like 1 to 3%, barely. And now for North Carolina. And this is the last race that it's basically a toss-up because of the fact we don't know if Roy Cooper, the popular governor, will run for Senate still. It is expected for him to say his opinion on it come June. And that's something to look out for because Willie Nickel, I think he loses. Jeff Jackson might run if Cooper decides not to. And Jeff Jackson would be a decent nominee. I think he could actually be the only other Democrat that can actually defeat Tom Tillis. But here's the problem for Tom Tillis. Trump still has an endorsed him. Trump's still 50-50 from what it seems like on endorsing Tom Tillis because he's not the most MAGA person, even though North Carolina is barely a lean state for the GOP. And they already got people running against them in the primary, so it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens in the coming months and the future developments on it. But still, you got all the endorsements. Also, by the way, for El Said for the Michigan, he actually got endorsed by Bernie Sanders, forgot to say that. But yeah, it's a toss-up race by every single fashion, by every single means. But because the Democrats don't have an S-tier candidate yet, I know it's a Trump midterm, and I wish to put this as a toss-up. I'm going to put this as a Tillis win barely by 0.5%. But if things develop against him, I wouldn't be surprised if Democrats actually win here barely. But for now, I'm going to leave this as a GOP state by barely a tilt margin. And as you can see, the GOP wins with 53 seats against the Democrats' 47 seats. Let me know what your map looks like. As always, feel free to leave a like and join the Discord and the channel membership. And as always, have a good rest of your day.